delighted today that we've got Dougie Spence joining us, talking about the Community Fund and the opportunities that are available there. And we've also got Elaine Wilson joining us from the Corra Foundation. So we'll do the usual format. So I'll hand over to our speakers first of all, and then we'll come back in and do Q&A. If you've got anything that you want to ask us questions, post them in either the Q&A or the chat as we go through. I'll come to them at the end. And I mean, if there are any things we can pick up on in the meantime, we will. And we will share copies of the slides, and we are recording this. So we'll get the slides sent out to everyone that registered once the event is done. So without holding you back anymore, I think Dougie is all poised. So I will hand you over to Dougie Spence, and he's going to take us through the Community Fund. Thank you, Dougie.
Morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing fine. Appreciate it's still a difficult time for many, but this is just a short presentation on behalf of the Community Fund, just to say hello and make sure you're aware of the support that's out there and available to you.
Dougie, I'm only interrupting just because we can see all your next slides in the screen as it is. So
oh, good Lord.
If you want it to just be the slideshow, then
see, I knew this was going to go wrong.
That's all right. Do you want me to do your slides?
Yeah, on you go. On you go. Apologies, folks.
We're good to go, Dougie.
Okay, thanks for the rescue, Naomi. My name is Dougie Spence. I'm a funding manager at the National Lottery Community Fund, and I'm going to tell you in a short 10-minute blast what we're about and what sorts of support we're able to offer you at the moment. Next slide, please. In terms of how we operate in Scotland, we operate to an area team model. We have 8 area teams, funding officers all technically based in Glasgow, albeit working from home at the moment. And we cover the 8 area teams as described there. In the wee box to the right-hand side, you'll see there are some telephone number. There's a telephone number, postal address, and an email which you can use to make contact with the office. So we are very much still open for business as usual. And when your inquiry comes through either through the telephone or through the advice line, you'll be signposted to one of the area team members who will get back in touch with you. Next slide, please. This is probably the most important slide that I would like you to take away from today's short presentation, is that we don't bite. Maybe kind of obvious, but what we're keen is for people to get in touch with us and speak to us before they start putting either pen to paper or finger to keyboard. Any plans, ideas, or thoughts that you might have regarding potential projects or funding that you might be looking for, we absolutely encourage you to get in touch first before you start that part of the process. So we're open to that, and we definitely don't bite. We're keen to hear from you. Next slide, please. We fund all sorts of work. We are the National Lottery Community Fund. There's a reasonably obvious clue in the name of the organisation. We were formerly called the Big Lottery, which meant something some time ago, but we've gone back to our roots and we're the Community Fund. So within communities, we are keen to fund all sorts of work. And I'll get on to a bit more of that in a minute. Next slide, please. In terms of who we can fund, a large number of eligible organisations exist, whether they're charities, SKIOs, KICs, constituted groups, companies limited by guarantee. We are able to fund those organisations. We are not, I'm afraid, able to fund either sole traders or companies that are limited by shares. Next slide. And the type of thing that we commonly get asked to fund is really pretty wide. And in general terms, unless it's illegal or it's for individuals or for the direct promotion of religious or political views, there's a good chance that we will be able to fund it. So whether that's for staffing costs, contribution to overheads, travel costs, travel costs have been quite low in claims over the last year, but refurbishment costs might be something that you're considering because you're having to adapt to the kind of post-COVID world. Equipment, promotion, marketing, building asset purchase, that's a separate program for that, which I'll come on to a bit later. But largely, as I say, unless it's illegal or it's for individual benefit, we're likely to be able to support in some shape or form. Next slide, please. Central to all our funding through all our programs, we really hope to see projects that are both people-led, strength-based and connected. What do we mean by people-led? Communities know what they want to do in their community. They're the people that are best placed to know and understand what their community needs. And we hope to see projects coming through from groups, social enterprises that are very much representative of their community. The community are able to get involved, have a direct link in being able to influence how the project or the group is developed and going to be going forward. Strength-based, this resonates very well with many social enterprises. What you're looking at is coming from an asset point of view. You're not coming at it from a deficit. You're looking to use the skills, the resources, the spaces that are within those particular communities to try and deliver a project. And connected, very important approach for our funding, and that's on the basis that people are connected and looking at who is able to understand what else is happening in the local landscape, who is speaking to others. We have a pot of jam. It is limited. We are able to spread it, and we'd like to spread it as widely as possible, but we can't really be funding two projects to do the same project in the same area, or indeed to be undercutting what each does. So connected is an awareness of what others are doing in that locality. Next slide, please. Onto programs, we're looking at National Lottery Awards for All. That is funding available from between £300 and £10,000. It's a broad, apologies, the dog is having a bark. Postman's arrived. The covers a broad range of community, sports, events, equipment, promotion, costs, etc. Fundamental to Awards for All is the community's really got to be obvious within the planning and delivery of the proposed project. We hope to see that in all applications, and that's certainly very true for Awards for All. Next slide, please. When you're talking about awards or grants above £10,000, it largely falls into two categories. We've got thematic programme, and then we've got local community programme, which I'll come on to in just a second. But next slide, please. Thematically, we've got Improving Lives, and we've got Young Start. And in the community angle, we've got community-led activity, which is up to £150,000. And you'll see there in the slide there to the right that community assets and Scottish Land Fund have lines through them. That's on the basis that those programmes are technically closed at the moment, although we're anticipating that Land Fund is likely to open sometime in the summer, and that's currently being scoped out at the moment. Community Assets is a capital programme that is currently suspended at the moment. We were due to refresh all our programmes in March or April of last year, but unfortunately, obviously, COVID appeared, and we decided not to go ahead with the new programs or development of those new programs at that time, because that felt a daft thing to be doing when we don't know what things were going to come out at the other side. But Improving Lives is awards 2 to 3 years, up to £200,000, and then Young Start again 2 to 3 years, but up to £100,000, and that's for projects that work directly with young people aged 8 to 24, and is using funds from dormant bank accounts. Next slide, please. When we're talking about Improving Lives, thematically, these are the areas that Improving Lives looks to work with. That's supporting children, young people, families experiencing challenging circumstances. That covers just about everyone, I think, at the moment. A very strong emphasis on projects that are supporting loss, isolation or loneliness. People who've experienced abuse, people who have perhaps experienced discrimination and or are working to challenge discrimination. And we added a new strand to Improving Lives in October last year, and that's for people facing financial hardships. That might be linking in advice or other forms of support that might be required now as a result of the COVID pandemic. As I say, wider work led by young people comes within the Young Start theme. Next slide, please. And we're talking about local community. We're looking at community-led medium, which is primarily about looking at neighbourhood level wellbeing projects, very much locally led, open and accessible to everyone, whether it's young people or older people, but it has to be open and accessible to many. Community ownerships of buildings and assets, that's primarily land fund, which is closed at the moment to new applications, but I believe is hoping to reopen in the summer months. Next slide, please. There's a number of ways to keep in touch with what we're doing. We have a blog which has articles going on it on a weekly, monthly basis that provides information and updates on what might be new, provides some guidance on how-tos to go about do things, what makes a perfect application. There's a host of information within there that you can access. Next slide. We've got a monthly e-bulletin which goes out to those that subscribe, and you subscribe to that via the website. That has lots of information. Usually it's also duplicated on the blog, but it has hints and tips on how to write your application, what sort of things you might want to consider in terms of developing your project idea, whether it's about evaluation or whatever. It also has information on all the various funds and some stories and shared experiences from some of the other projects that have been funded by us. And moving on. And the second most important slide for you to take away after the don't bite one is that keep in touch. We do have open line of communication. We're keen to hear from folk, and we'll get back to you. We might not be able to answer your call immediately, but when it comes through the central switchboard or the central email, it gets passed on to the various area teams and then gets disseminated out to the area teams, who will then make contact with you direct. And we're usually in touch in the moment with folk within 24-48 hours of their initial inquiry landing. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of what we are about at the moment. I can see there's some questions in the chat, which I will try and find and get into, not being a Zoom expert. I'll try and deal with those, but happy to take any questions when Naomi says it's a good idea for me to take questions.
Thank you very much, Dougie. What we'll do is we'll come to the questions at the end. And I usually bring up the questions in chat as well, obviously, unless there's anything that's very unique to a particular organisation, because there's often a lot of learning other people can get, I think, from the questions. So we'll come to those after we've heard from Elaine. So delighted to also welcome Elaine to today's session from the Corra Foundation. So over to you, Elaine.
Sorry, fundamental error of Zoom. Take yourself off mute. Sorry about that. Thank you for inviting me along this morning, Naomi. I'm just going to pull up my slides just now. Will you just bear with me a wee second? So as Naomi said, my name is Elaine Wilson. I'm Head of Learning and Development at Corra Foundation. And a bit like Dougie, I'm just going to talk you through a wee bit about what we, about Corra, what we do, some information about the funds that we have available, and also some information about some of the collaborative funds that we're currently working on as well. So Corra Foundation is an organisation that exists to make a difference with people and communities by encouraging positive change, opportunities, fairness and growth of aspiration, which improve quality of life. And we do this predominantly through our grant making activities, but also we work alongside communities in our PLACE programme to understand what local needs are and how we can help them to achieve their own ambitions at a local level. Corra Foundation was previously Lloyd's TSB Foundation for Scotland, so we've been around for over 33 years. In that time, we've distributed over 152 million across the whole of Scotland, predominantly to charities. And And in March last year, we launched our new strategy, a 10-year strategy. It was a week before the first lockdown, so that was an interesting time. Our new strategy focuses on 3 big changes. The first change is about the power to create change rests with people themselves. So we really believe that people are best placed to know what they need and how they can go about achieving change. Our second one is that people with those ideas are supported and skilled, connected to make those changes possible. So that's about us really identifying their needs, how we can help them progress their talents, their opportunities, whether that's through funding or capacity building or just making networks and links. We really want to try and bring people together. And the third thing is about collaboration. It's about we need to work together to respond to the big challenges facing Scotland. And so we are committed and really love working in partnership with people. So that's organisations and local communities with other funders, really to make those changes happen. And I think well, hindsight is a wonderful thing. I think one of the big challenges obviously we faced in the last year is coronavirus, and our new strategy really lended itself to that. So we were able to adapt quite flexibly and quickly respond to the need. And I think this slide not only highlights what Corra's done, but I think what the whole of the third sector actually achieved and delivered across 2020. So we collaborated with a number of funders and SCVO to deliver some of the Scottish Government coronavirus response funds, including things like the Third Sector Resilience Fund and Supporting Communities Fund. And I'll talk about, excuse me, a couple of new existing opportunities now that have kind of progressed from them. And in that, we've distributed over £58 million in grants, and a lot of that directly to activities where people were responding to the needs of their communities. So that's just a fantastic thing to have been involved in over the last year. As I said, Corra predominantly is a grant maker. And we have 2 core programmes in Corra that our trustees commit to. Our first is our Henry Duncan grants. Now, this is only available for registered charities. The programme was reviewed last year as part of our strategy, and as part of that, we look to offer more unrestricted funding, so giving funding that would enable people just to get on and deliver what they need to do. There's multi-year grants available through that programme, so up to 5 years funding is available. We focus each year under a broad theme. So in 2020, we looked at poverty, and in 2021, our focus is on mental health. We're just about finalising the criteria for the Henry Duncan grant, so that should be launched in the next few weeks and will be available on our website. The second flagship programme that we offer is our Partnership Drugs Initiative, and that's a commitment we have with the Scottish Government to really help focus support on children, young people, families affected by drug and alcohol issues. There's various strands come off of the Partnership Drugs Initiative, and it's normally a 2-stage application process. Again, we're just at the stage where we're finalising closing dates and inviting applications in the next couple of months. So more information on that will be available on our website. So as I said, we are committed to collaboration and working alongside people, and we have been working really closely with SCVO, First Port, Scottish Government and other community development organisations in the recovery programme. So you may be aware of these 2 funds, but I just wanted to highlight again what their availability and what was under each one. Communities Recovery Fund, which is open until the 12th of February, is for any third sector organisation, basically in terms of how they're responding or trying to help communities deal with the challenges that are presented as a result of coronavirus. Grants over up to £25,000 are available for individual organisations. And it's really just, as I say, funding to enable you to meet the challenges that communities are facing. The second element is Adapt and Thrive. Now it's open for a bit longer. It's open until the 31st of March. And grants have recently been amended. So it had originally been grants up to £25,000, but that's now been increased to grants of up to £75,000. Money under this fund is unrestricted, so it allows you to spend the money the best way you see fit for your organisation. But the aim is to help organisations think about their own plans, their own recovery plans, their cash flow, and how a bit of a grant could really help them adapt or develop as a response to coronavirus, and really help them, enable them and move forward. Some of the things that you might think about there is, as Dougie mentioned in his slides, about how you adapt your premises to respond to enable more people to come in when we're allowed to meet up again, or it could be how you revamp your services to be more online, etc. So there's lots of scope there for you to really think about how you can adapt and really progress some of your ideas. Part of that package as well is you will get linked to a business advisor to discuss and go through your recovery plan and future cash flow projections to enable you to move forward. A couple of other areas that Corra works alongside is we do have other funds that are open and available. We delivered the Comic Relief Shift the Power Fund. That fund is currently closed, but if anything progresses there, we will be opening it. We also are working with the Scottish Government to deliver the Third Sector Homelessness Fund at the moment. That's a £3 billion fund about ending homelessness together plan. It closes fairly soon, so it closes next week, but there's more information on our website really about how organisations can support that. And another fund which is coming soon and takes learning from what we've delivered last year and is trying to respond to that is the Enabling Neighbourhoods and Communities Fund. This fund very much is focused about local people delivering activities and opportunities in their neighbourhoods and their local area, which are focused on helping build connections and keep people's well-being together. Grants will be unrestricted, and you'll be able to spend grants for up to 12 months. So you decide what best suits the needs of your local community and your organisation. Grants will be available for up to £5,000, but we expect an average grant to be in the region of between £1,000 and £2,000. So as I said, I want to thank you for listening to me today. I also want to thank Dougie for putting his slide up about you don't bite, or we don't bite. I think Corra is very similar to the National Lottery Community Funds, where we are open for business. We want to hear from people. We want to talk to people. If MD has got any queries or unsure about any of the things that we have on offer, are unclear about criteria or filling the application form in, we're here to help. So our contact details are there, our email address, our phone number and our website. We also have a newsletter that's available that you can subscribe to, and we will send you information about up and coming programs that are open for you to access. You can follow us on Twitter. So again, thank you for letting me speak today. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I'm also happy to share the slides.
Thank you very much, Elaine. And I'd actually made some notes as well before our webinar started today, so I wanted to make sure that I pointed out things like the Recovery Fund closure date of the 12th of February, because that one's coming around very quickly, and also Adapt and Thrive. And there's a few questions I've seen already come in around business planning and some of that support. And I thought it was also perhaps helpful to say to people that Adapt and Thrive is very much put out there as being part of a programme, and the programme includes some of that support, not just the access to finance. So I'd really encourage you to apply for some of that support and get that guidance from people if you're not sure of which way to go. So I'll get Elaine and Dougie to turn their video and audio back on, and we'll do a few questions if that's there we go, all ready and poised. So thank you again for both of those presentations. I can see a few questions have come in, and obviously you'll have seen some of those come in too. So perhaps it's helpful to start on the ones that you might have already seen as well. So one of the things I know that we've seen come up quite a few times as we've run sessions on finance is looking at that early stage finance piece. Obviously this is a question from someone who's kind of pre-trading. I guess if you're coming in from the general charity sector for some of your funds, the trading isn't necessarily critical. It's the social impact that's the critical piece. So I didn't know if maybe you got just a comment just for those people that are perhaps at an earlier stage in their charity or social enterprise. And perhaps Elaine first and then Dougie.
I think the key thing to think about is when you're early stage of charity or social enterprise is to just think quite realistically about what your expectations are and what you need to do. I think sometimes we see organisations that are quite rightly very ambitious, but it takes time to evolve and develop and create the space and the links. So I think being really realistic about what your costs will be, how you would plan to go about that, I think are really important, because it's the kind of thing that we will look into and just go, will you be able to deliver that within the sort of time frame? So that would be my key takeaway for them.
Yeah, and I think I would absolutely reiterate that. I think it's quite important to be able to walk before you can run, and if you're going to be walking somewhere, it helps to have a good idea where you're wanting to walk to and keep that in mind. So know what you're trying to achieve, or understand what you're trying to achieve and how you're going to get there. And there are loads of organisations out there that are able to provide support and advice on that front, whether that's through your local TSI, Impact Hub, First Port, or whatever, is absolutely social enterprise. Ask away and get advice and get that in hand first before you do start to take on the world. And it's absolutely great to have ambition, but I think you need to sort of keep it measured and tempered initially. If you're potentially starting up as a sole trader, you're potentially opening yourselves up to liabilities, costs, etc., that might be attributable to yourself rather than some other form of legal entity. You need to have a careful think about how you're going to be delivering, and that's all part of the planning process.
Absolutely, and I always reiterate the support, but it comes back to that being to get the clarity before you go to a funder. They don't bite. I think we have to really reiterate that, and I wanted to touch on that a little bit in one of my questions. But you still need to have done some of the groundwork, I think, yourself, in terms of trying to understand what it is you're trying to do, what difference you're going to make, and trying to make that case. And there's lots of support, whether you're very early stage and you go to organisations like First Port or Scotland Unlimited. Lots of support. I think School for Social Entrepreneurs is another one. So there's a few different places you can get the early stage support. And then obviously if you're at an early stage or at later stage, Just Enterprise is kind of the banner in which to go into for some of that support. So I've asked one of my colleagues if they might be able to post up the Just Enterprise link so you can see that to apply for some of the support. It's free. So you'd be a fool not to use some of the kind of free business support, I always think. It just helps you guide your own thinking.
I was going to say as well, Naomi, Just Enterprise are involved with the Adapt and Thrive programme, so some of those links to that business support are there if you're considering going to the Adapt and Thrive. So you would be hooked into some of those business advisors who could be, and we see that very much as part of that programme, is about how we can help people think about what a plan looks like, how you set out cash flows, things like that sometimes can feel a bit daunting, especially if you're new.
Absolutely. I couldn't point people more towards the business support if I tried. I think we run a lot of sessions on that. It's really helpful. I'm going to ask perhaps a tricky question. We know it comes up a lot, and I know Social Enterprise Scotland have been doing some work around this, but obviously different funders have different criteria. Is there a reason, Elaine, why you focus on just registered charities and not all social enterprises? Or is it just, they're the rules and the criteria, and different funders do?
So some of our programs have expanded to look at more the whole of the third sector. So our Comic Relief Fund was more whole third sector, so we looked at constituted groups and things like that. I think there's a couple of things. One, originally some charity or some charitable trusts will be led by their memorandum and articles and their governance documents, so they will have it in there about who they can support. Also, what came to us is about how we manage funding. So Dougie talked about his spreading the jam, and sometimes money just doesn't reach. So we have to think about where the priorities are, where the needs are, obviously. So we did consider all these things when we reviewed our Henry Duncan and did a lot of consultation, but decided to keep it focused on registered charities. But the other work that we do, we really want to link into social enterprises. So our work in communities, we work alongside. If social enterprises are in the mix in those communities, we would be happy to have those conversations about how we can support them through our links with our community coordinators. And there's some small bits of funding available with work around that, but it's very much community led. So yeah.
No, thank you, Elaine. And my understanding, Dougie, is the Community Fund has a broader approach. Obviously, you put the list up of different organisations that could apply, and I think you have picks on.
Yeah, and we're sort of, I suppose, answerable to government departments, and our sort of founding document is an Act of Parliament, and that kind of stipulates our remit, as it were. So we're kind of governed by that, but generally, individual benefit, individual profit is a challenge, and anything else that's with a community focus is something we can look at.
Thank you, Dougie. I'm looking through the questions. I'm always kind of feel like I've got my head darting about everywhere as I look through the screen. Someone's just said, are there good case studies perhaps that come out as part of your organisations on the website, or good examples in terms of capturing some of the learning in terms of as people come out of funding streams, or just examples, I guess, of people that are at that slightly later stage in their development? So could people find case studies and things on your websites?
We do have case studies on our website. We also produce what we call impact briefings. So we talk about the processes that we've gone through and the learning that we've taken about how we can improve our practices, but also the kind of themes or things that came up as opportunities or challenges for people that have been going through some of those programs. So we produced one here on some of the responses to the coronavirus, and we have case studies of the types of things that we might support and where people are at in terms of the impact that funding has made. So yeah.
Yeah, the website or the blog page, which is Scotland specific, within the presentation and on the slides. Yeah, there are case studies, there are reviews, program reviews. There are no end of resources that you can have a look at there. There's quite a lot to be able to try and navigate. But there is plenty of stuff there to try and get a handle on.
No, I think it's really valuable sometimes to see the kind of things that have been funded, look at an idea of the projects that have gone before you, because actually you'll see the kind of thing that's of interest to funders.
We also publish all our awards, so all awards are detailed on the website. So you get a brief summary of what is announced.
Can I also suggest we publish our grants as well, but people might also be interested in 360 Giving. So 360 Giving is a website where a lot of funders across the UK fund what they've supported, and you can break it down by region and area. So as well as giving you a list of the types of things people will fund, it will also give you more information about the funders who may be funding in your localities.
And as a helpful tip, we find that website sometimes easier to use than our own one. So
that really is a useful tip, Dougie, because not everyone would always say that, but sometimes it is easy just because there's such a wealth of information.
I said nothing.
Yeah, we didn't hear you, and we're not recording the session.
No, I realise that.
Yep. Really helpful. Thank you. Obviously, we've touched a lot on kind of what is fundable today. I often think one of the biggest lessons as well we can always share to people is perhaps what are the most common reasons why applications are unsuccessful? So what are the things to avoid?
I think people that don't meet criteria. Often people don't spend time reading the criteria so that they can really, do you really fit, and asking themselves honestly, do I fit the criteria? Do I meet what's being asked for here? So I think that can often be a reason why people are unsuccessful. I think sometimes as well, people don't always follow the guidance notes in detail. details, so if you're are like or try to overcomplicate their application. So do you know, keep it plain English, clear, provide lots of clarity, detailed on the kind of costs that you're looking for. So just kind of go through that checklist that often funders will say, these are the things that we're looking for, or the wee bits of guidance that they'll maybe have on the form or separate documents, just to make sure you're answered. So it's often those kind of things that people fall down on. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would absolutely reiterate all of what Elaine has said. Plain English is important. We see lots of applications from time to time coming in on with ologies and isms and specialties and all the rest of it. And it's bingo in terms of some of the words. And I think it's always useful to have perhaps a critical friend that may not be involved in your organisation that can sit back and read an application and say, you know what, I understand what you're trying to do with this application. I think is always quite a useful step. In terms of unsuccessful applications to ourselves, I think there's probably two main categories. One is budget. The pot of jam isn't big enough to meet the demand, and that's always an issue. But aligned to that, because it's a kind of comparative situation, it's program criteria and whether or not the proposal meets the criteria. Not enough time spent reading the guidance. Perhaps a call to one of the funding officers would have solved the gap. But I think in terms of us, it's very definitely the involvement of the community. Sometimes people have an idea, but it's not obvious that they have spoken to their community or they've done their groundwork and legwork and established that this is something that the community actually wants or sees a need for. That is often missing.
I would just reiterate again, Dougie, the bit about phoning. That's so important. I mean, it doesn't matter how small the question or you feel a bit stupid at it. It's not going to be stupid. I think the more you can give people a call, have a chat. I mean, we've got grant advisors available all the time to chat to people and just talk through their ideas or answer those simple questions that they may have. I think that would save people a lot of time, and it's that pre-application there is there to help. So use it.
Yeah, we're a bit like Elaine in terms of when COVID hit, we moved from kind of office-based, we headed off to working from home. But because of the kind of area connections we'd be kind of developing over the years, that was relatively seamless, that part of the process. So we have connections with TSIs and some of the main anchor groups that are operating in local areas. So we're able to get a context. All the funding officers have a team and they know the area within which they're operating. So they will have some of the general context and information, and it's more than likely that as part of the initial contact phase, you will be speaking to somebody who has lead responsibility for that particular area and will understand a bit about where you're coming from.
Absolutely, and perhaps touches on one of the points about other people locally that can help people in terms of holding hands through some of the process of funding. I would actually say the TSIs are a great source of third sector interfaces. They've got funding officers available. They can talk you through the different funds. And coming back to this point about guidance notes and FAQs, don't waste your time on an application if you don't meet the criteria, because if you actually talk to the TSIs or people that work in funding, they can probably help identify and work with you on finding funders that do fit what you're trying to do, and you'd be better spending your time filling in an application to them than an application. I think sometimes people try to think, oh, well, I could kind of make it fit. And actually it comes back to that comment about the pot of jam. If the pot of jam is limited, trying to make something fit that really doesn't, it's more likely to lead to rejection than success.
What I should have said earlier, in terms of accessing awards for all, the form, the application, it's all online. It's fairly straightforward. But for the larger stuff, whilst there are sample forms on the website, the actual application form isn't there, and that's for the very deliberate reason of trying to encourage people to make that contact and have that chat first, and not waste time on an application that's not going to stand a chance of success.
Yeah, no, thank you, Dougie. I wanted to pick up just on that kind of don't bite comment, because obviously we've talked very much about kind of making the contact with funders pre-application. how important do you think that relationship is if you've been successful on funding? I think right through. I mean, obviously at the moment, you could plan a project with the best will in the world, and as we've seen in the last 9 months, things can suddenly change. So how would you encourage people to maintain that partnership and that conversation post perhaps being successful in funding as well?
Teams will naturally do that in any event. I think when the pandemic began to really ramp up in terms of impact, and funding officers were making contact with all their groups in grant management and saying, hello, we're still here. Speak to us if you need to. Everyone got an email. Contact was maintained. We had to be a wee bit agile in terms of who we were able to speak and perhaps speak to and change contacts, because some people were no longer able to be active in delivery. And as a result of that, we were able to either grant extensions or agree to funding perhaps just being changed and delivering something in a completely different manner, which would still be compatible with what the program stood for, but allowed the group to continue delivering. So it generally happens naturally that there will always be a kind of touch point with groups, particularly new groups that we've not dealt with before. We're not there to interfere and get in the way and stop them from doing what they want to do, but we will still have a kind of watching brief, as it were, just to make sure things are ticking along as they hope.
Yeah, very similar to Dougie. When the pandemic hit, we contacted groups. If there's any issues with any of your support or needs, then we'll be as flexible as possible, give it extensions and stuff like that, try to reduce reporting burdens. I think for us, we need to make sure that the relationship is proportionate to the size of the grant. So we're not asking, if you're coming for £2,000, we're not asking you to report to us every month. That would just be ridiculous. But we're really clear up front when we write to people to say you've been successful. Here's we'll ask for outline what we'll require in terms of monitoring, and say we are here to help. So if there's any concerns or issues, that you should get in touch and let us know. We're trying to offer as much unrestricted grants as possible so that people don't feel that they have to every 5 minutes and say this has changed, that's changed, can I change the grant? So we're trying to be as flexible as possible so that people can use that fund in the best way they can. But I think for us, we're still here and we're happy to answer any queries or questions. Get in touch. We'll be really clear up front the type of relationship we expect with you. So if you are getting a larger grant, we will be maybe a bit more in touch with you, and if it's more proportionate, a lot less. So yeah, it's about that balancing act and recognising everybody's busy, and they need to make the best use of us, and we can just make that relationship feels relevant to their needs.
Yeah, I mean, trust has come up on quite a few of our sessions. I think it's something that we're all having to trust people enormously at the moment, in the way that we communicate, in the way that, unrestricted money's going out much more. I think it's that I always say to people, when a fund is supporting you, they're supporting the impact and the difference you want to make. So they just as much want success as the project that's applied for it. So, if things have changed or situations change, there is usually always a way round, and there's always a way that things can be adapted to make sure that outcomes are still properly met. So keep that dialogue going, because we're all ultimately trying to make that social impact and make that difference, whether you're the organisation, a support organisation like us, or a funder. It's social impact that drives us all. So keep that focus, I think, in mind, and I think if you're always going in with that, people are with you and want to see you succeed. That would be kind of the key thing I'd say. I'm conscious if there's any other questions that come through. Someone was asking a little bit early on, just in terms of other projects, in terms of kind of community growing initiatives and use of land that have kind of come through during the COVID example. It's a very specific thing, and obviously if it's not the field that you work in, you may not know, but I just wondered, is there a sense of any of that kind of community growing stuff that you could point people towards case studies on? Or
I think if you're to, whether through our own website or through the 360 website, there are quite a number of community growing projects dealing with sustainability, whether they've already been funded or whether they're just going through the process of coming to us now. That's has definitely been something that we have seen a rise in. I think land ownership and permissions and all the rest of it, these are things that need to be sorted out between groups, and that, to be clear, the footballers don't want to come back and find that their pitch is full of parsnips or whatever. So community groups are well placed to deliver that sort of activity, and we have seen plenty of those.
Thank you.
I don't know a huge amount about it, but like Dougie, go to 360 Giving, even organisations like Nourish Scotland, where they might have more information about that kind of the links with food and growing and stuff like that. There may be more information there for people that have an interest in those kind of projects.
Thank you, Elaine. It's a useful pointer there as well. And I think we can learn so much from other people's projects and ideas. And in my experience, generally, those projects don't then mind a contact in terms of asking how they've done stuff and that learning. We tend to be a sector that's very, very open to that shared learning. So if you find examples on the 360 site, I would very much encourage organisations to contact organisations that have been successful in funding and find out a bit more about their project, because you can learn a lot from them, I think. So don't be afraid of approaching other projects as much as funders, I think is the thing I would say to people. Just conscious whether there's any just last questions. We are sharing, obviously, the slides. I said that at the start, so I'll get them out to everyone that's registered today. I always come to funders at the end in terms of what would be the kind of one top tip. And I think we can all take a guess at what the one top tip is likely to be based on some of the comments already. But Elaine, do you have just a top tip for people?
I think as well, the thing about it is speak to us about the kind of things. I mean, and I'm probably speaking for a lot of independent funders in Scotland, that they're all open to having these conversations and want to talk to people to make sure that people aren't wasting their time, which is the key thing. And we know how precious, especially over the last year, time is. So yeah, I say talk to us and be really clear about what you want and what you need. Clarity and simplicity as well.
Thank you, Elaine. Dougie, a top tip?
I don't think I could really top Elaine's, because that would be the top tip that I would go for. But don't complicate things. Keep it simple, both in terms of the project and in terms of what you're putting down in the application form.
Great. And I would just say there's free business support that's out there. Use it. You'd be daft not to. And read the guidance notes and FAQs. Don't waste your time on things that don't fit, would be the bits I'd add. But I think the key thing I've got from this is make contact if you're interested in any of these. Funders are there, they're wanting to hear from you, they're open for business, and don't be afraid to pick up the phone, I guess is the key message from today. I don't think there's any more last questions coming through, so I just wanted to thank Elaine and Dougie for joining us today. Really useful session. So really great to have you along. I think we like to do these regular check-ins and get funders on. We know it's important to our members. And just if you are looking at the Recovery Fund, 12th of February is the deadline, and Adapt and Thrive is currently live. And I would encourage you, if you're looking at either of those, to be looking at them sooner rather than later. The 12th of February will certainly be here very soon. So if you need any pointers or links to those, feel free to contact us at the team at SES, and we can send out our kind of funding sheet that we've been preparing. It's on our website. So thank you very much.